Hello, it's Alexis. I have a sort of tough one that I'm going to conquer today. I'm going to talk about forgiveness today. It's usually something that we all struggle with. We never want to do it. It's really hard. But I think starting a new year, this is a really good thing to talk about because usually this is something that really holds us back from reaching some of our goals because if you don't forgive all those negative emotions that you're holding on to, like anger and guilt and shame and all these things that you haven't healed, get really hard to make positives out of. So a lot of times we need those things so that we can live more positive lives and reach our goals. So I actually found some things in some of the books I've read over the past year about it also, to help put it into perspective. I also have some quotes from a pastor I watch on YouTube called Michael Todd of Transformation Church. So I have a couple things, and I'll use those in a little bit. But first, I just want to say that I get that forgiveness is really hard, but we also need it. I feel like it's really hard for us because a lot of times when something bad happens or somebody does something poor to us, we like to just say, okay, I'm just going to move on. And you just move on from it and you think it doesn't matter anymore, that you've fixed all of it. But then we see those emotions that you didn't acknowledge or actually let go of or move past show up in future relationships, personality traits that you've acquired, or just like a mental breakdown, and then you just don't understand what's going on, but it's because you never really moved past those negative feelings. So forgiveness can be really with anything. It can be that you need to forgive somebody else for something that they did wrong to you. It can be forgiving yourself for a way that you reacted or emotions that you felt. It can be forgiving a situation, forgiving the universe for something bad happening also it didn't necessarily come from a person. It's just this wide variety of things, and when we don't forgive, it really just festers and it sits inside of you and it doesn't ever resolve. So we can't just move on past things without forgiving the actual situation and actually like internally forgiving yourself and others for what happened. So it's awful and it sucks, but once you get the hang of it, it actually makes you feel a lot better, and then you have all this room inside of you for positive feelings and positive things to grow. So it's definitely something that we all have to do, and it can look different in anybody. How one person forgives somebody doesn't necessarily mean that's how everybody should forgive. Some people are better at it than others. So we'll talk about different ways that you can do that. If anybody is interested, Michael Todd has a whole, I think like over 10 videos. He just did it this year. And all the topics are about forgiveness. He called it Forgiveness University and went through a very large series about it. Talks about forgiving others, but also most importantly, forgiving yourself. So I have some quotes from him that were really powerful to me. I took notes during that segment. And they're just very deep, and I feel like it might kind of help people put it into perspective a little bit, how important it really is. And he also goes into different ways of how you can forgive yourself, the steps that you need to take to do that. So one of the first things that I wrote down is that you are worth being forgiven. I thought that was very deep because a lot of times we blame ourselves for so many things, or we blame ourselves for putting ourselves in a situation that ended up negative, or just all these things. We put so much blame on ourselves, and then we kind of forget that you have to forgive yourself too for those situations, and you're worth being forgiven. You are worth being able to live a positive life and have good and happy and healthy things happen to you. You can forgive everyone around you and still hate looking at yourself because you never took the time to forgive yourself. We like to forget about ourselves. It's easy because we live in a people-pleasing world. We want everybody else around us to be happy. So usually we start with forgiving everybody else around us when really we should start with ourselves, because then once you forgive yourself, that's definitely the hardest one, and then it's easier to forgive others. So one of the exercises that he started with was talking to yourself, saying, I forgive you for blank, and then just continuously going through things that you like forgive yourself for. So in past things I did, just to share, I forgive you for choosing bad ways to cope, to procrastinate your healing. That's a really easy one. I did that a ton. I forgive you for not being perfect. I forgive you for building walls. And I forgive you for not loving yourself. And then another quote that he said was, I have to see myself differently than I've ever seen myself before. Forgiving yourself is so emotional because once you break down what you're forgiving yourself for, you open up this giant wall of vulnerability and this big hole of emotions and all these really scary things that you have to face. But then it's like a spiritual healing, and you have all this space for really great things to happen, and you lose so many negative emotions that you actually see bad personality traits of yourself coming out, and now you're just kind of a new person. You have to forgive yourself for personal promises that you broke. I did that a ton, especially in this past year. Forgive yourself for your predetermined deadlines. Forgive yourself for your immaturity. Forgive yourself for the neglect, and forgive yourself for your thoughts. And another one was forgive yourself for your flagrant fouls. None of them were accidents, but you still have to forgive yourself. So forgive yourself for those crappy things that you did that you're really not happy with yourself about. It wasn't an accident. You did it on purpose because who you were at that time was who you needed to be, or how your emotions were shaping you to be, but you still have to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for the pain that you caused people, the pain that you caused yourself, because probably at the time you were hurt or you weren't the same person. So you have to forgive yourself for being in that mental headspace that you were in so that you can move past it and grow and be a better person. And then these are kind of some of the steps that he said that you have to do. One of the first things is you have to face yourself. If you can face yourself, then you can fix that thing. Own it. Own and take responsibility for the things that you did that you want to forgive yourself for, and learn how to carry your own load. Remind yourself of, it says who God called you to be. If you don't believe in that, just remind yourself of your purpose and what you can aspire to be. Let go of all of those things that are weighing you down and just remind yourself of how magic and powerful you truly can be. Grieve yourself, the person that you thought that you were, the plan that you thought that you were going to have that did not work out, the relationship that you thought you had, and the body size that you thought you had. Grieve yourself for that old person that was in that situation. Then you will have a whole new person that you can adore and love and learn to learn. It's going to be a whole different side of yourself. Insulate yourself. Get good people around you that support you. And he did like a representation on stage where if you surround yourself with people, you can't fall. So if you're surrounded by all these people when it's too much and when it's hard, you're not going to fall because you're surrounded by great people. A lot of things we really like to do alone, but you can't always do everything alone. You have to have people around you. You have to have a support system, people that love you, people that care about you, people that will go through it all with you. Make sure that you're secured. I understand being strong and independent, trust me, but you still have to have your people. So make sure that you're not doing everything alone. Trying to get people who really know you and love you and support you, and keep those people around you. Next one is to value yourself because you're worth it. Fill yourself up so there's no holes at the bottom of the cup, so that when you are filling yourself up, it's actually filling yourself up and you're not just giving and nothing's going anywhere, or trying and then you're not growing. You need help unpacking your baggage. A lot of times I think best when I'm brainstorming some of my crap with some of my friends, even if they don't have anything necessarily to say back. I enjoy unpacking my baggage with someone else so that they can hear it, but then I can hear it out loud too. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I never heard it that way because I never said it out loud to someone else. And then that will help you to see things from a different perspective, and maybe they will have something beneficial to say back, but it's not necessarily about what people say back. It's just about opening up is part of that healing. That act of opening up and talking to other people, being vulnerable, that is healing within itself. And then the last thing he talks about is embracing yourself, giving yourself the permission to heal yourself. It doesn't matter where you are right now. It doesn't matter where you think you are supposed to go. Just embrace where you are, what your plans are, what your goals are, and really just try to move forward that way. Forgiveness, I think, is one of the best things I ever did. I do it every year, different ways. I think one of the first times I ever did it, I wrote notes to everybody that did me wrong, or people that I felt did me wrong, or situations that I really just didn't think that I was gone from. So I wrote notes down, and then I read them out loud, and then you're done with it. So you put it all down, you get your anger out, you get your frustrations out, and then you read it, and you're done. And now it's gone. So you have to, which that sometimes is hard too, just to face why you're mad and to actually hear it out loud, to that pain that you have to re-feel, to forgive, because you do have to kind of go back through it to forgive yourself and others. And then this is from You Are a Badass. This is a really great book. I loved it. She has a whole chapter about forgiveness as well, so I'm just going to read some of the quotes that she has also. It's a very popular topic for a lot of self-help books because it is so important. Like, we literally have to do it. Forgiveness means giving up all hope for a better past. I really like that because it makes sense, because when you're not forgiving, you're holding on to the past, but also acting like it's going to change because you're not forgiving the situation. It's over, it's done with. You have to leave that where it is. Put things into perspective. It always helped me to, when trying to forgive others, to try to put it into perspective why they did that. What headspace were they in at the time that they hurt me? Because if they were in pain or they were confused or not themselves, then you have to understand that, because I've been in that place where I've hurt people because I wasn't in a good mental space. So then that helped me to put it into perspective, like, okay, it wasn't about me. It was about what they were going through, and I just happened to be kind of a side effect of that. So if you put that in perspective and actually see that person as like a human being, it makes it easier to forgive. Especially with our parents as well, we like to put a lot of blame on our parents for things. Like, well, you didn't do that when I was a kid, or you weren't there, and that's why I'm this way. And I've had my fair share of that also, but they're also human beings. They've gone through things, they've had pain, probably did the best that they could, or maybe they didn't, but either way, you still have to forgive them and forgive the situation so that you can grow and feel better. When you don't forgive, all that stuff just bottles up, and that's when we explode and we have emotional breakdowns, which are still okay, but it's much better to just forgive and let go. Another one is, the moment you decide to forgive and let your negative feelings melt away, you are on the road to freedom. So it's all about taking care of yourself. Forgiveness is about you. A lot of people say that forgiveness is not for the other person, but it's for you, because it's so therapeutic and it makes you feel so much better. And once you let go of that burden of feeling anger or pain or resentment or guilt and shame, all those things go away. And it's really refreshing. You really will feel so much better afterwards. You might cry in the process or like get mad, but it's okay to re-feel those feelings that you feel for that situation or that person or yourself. Re-feel how you felt. Put yourself back in that situation, feel those feelings for the last time, and then forgive. Let it go. It's done. It's over with. And you can't do anything about it now. It's very easy to regret, but there's kind of no point because you can't go back. You can only learn from it and grow from it, and you can only learn and grow from it by forgiving and letting those things go. Holding on to resentment is like taking poison and waiting for your enemies to die. So one of the biggest things when we don't forgive is it's not hurting the other person. It's hurting you. It's poisoning yourself, because holding on to those negative feelings inside yourself is not hurting that other person. It's only toxic to you. So you have to do it for yourself, because that's who you're trying to save. That's who you're trying to fix. So this kind of goes along with that. It says forgiving isn't about being nice to them. It's about being nice to yourself. And then she has, what is it, 6, 7, 8 different like bold things that she says help with forgiving. One of them is finding compassion for yourself or anybody else who did something wrong to you. Erase the other person from the equation. So if you take them out and just look at the situation and yourself, it might be easier for you to forgive. Another one is decide that you'd rather be happy than right, which, I really struggle with that one. I always liked to like sit on old things and I would be like, okay, but like why? And you don't have to be right. And you don't need to know why somebody did something. I am like that, where I always want to know why. But sometimes you can't know why. You just have to see it for how it is and then move on from it, and then you'll just feel better. Like sometimes you just have to cold turkey it and just let it go, as awful and hard as it is. This one says to look at it from all angles, so kind of like how I talked about earlier, it might help to put some perspective into it for why that person did that or why you did that. What situation were you in? Kind of like analyze that, feel some compassion like before, feel sympathy for yourself, others, and that might help too. This one says to have a total shit fit. So like I said, it's okay to re-feel those things, completely break down about it, and that will help you work through it. This one says, remember that you won't even remember this. So some of those small things that we hold on to actually have a really big impact on us. So even if it's something so stupid, you probably won't remember it, but you still have to let go of those emotions, because those can transfer into your future. This one just says, forget about it. And then the last one is to love yourself because you deserve it. So there's a lot of themes. Forgiveness does come with a lot of love for yourself, showing compassion for yourself, because you do deserve to be forgiven. You deserve to let go of those feelings and feel better about it. This is called Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. She doesn't really talk about forgiveness in this chapter, but it's a chapter that's called I'll Never Get Past This, which I feel like is kind of similar. And this is just some things that I highlighted. Kind of about, like, you can't ignore your pain and you have to find ways to embrace the good that came out of it. If you don't look for the good that came out of what you've lived through, it's all wasted. So forgiveness also is kind of about moving on. So once you forgive, you can move on to look at situations different and kind of be blessed for why that happened. It's like they always say all the time, to trust the process, or a lot of times we don't know why things happened until so far later, and then we realize, oh, that's why I had to go through that. That's why I did that. That's why it was so awful. So you have to understand also that when you're forgiving, you're letting go of the pressure on yourself for trying to figure out why it happened, but also you can move forward, and then eventually you might realize, like, oh, okay, like, I get it. And a lot of it is really, you have to be really vulnerable with yourself to forgive, vulnerable with other people, and it is a process. But I think that we all should start with this, especially as a new year. Start by writing down some of the things that you kind of have negative feelings about, and you might not even realize that it's something that you have to forgive. But definitely start with yourself, and then I recommend the writing to people. I probably wouldn't give it to them because a lot of times we write some pretty nasty things when we're trying to forgive people for old pain. But definitely write to yourself, forgive yourself, because we're just humans and we're all just trying to get through it the best that we can. Sometimes we're not in good spaces, so we do poor things, and that's okay. So start with what I did in the thing before and say, I forgive you for, and just list out as many things that you can. You can do that with yourself, you can do that for others. And then I highly encourage you to read those things out loud, because when you hear it out loud is when you really get that emotional tie. And that's probably when you'll have the greatest emotional reaction that will like really like hit deep. But that's what you want. And then you'll feel so relieved afterwards. Like, give yourself a whole hour to yourself, shut your phone off, do this, write it all down, type it up. And then afterwards, just say, okay, now I'm gonna let it go. And then you just do that. And it'll be so amazing to see all the beautiful things that come out of that once you learn to forgive yourself and others. So, I think that's all that I have. If anybody has any questions, comments, feel free to let me know. I hope everybody has a wonderful new year. Happy 2021, and let's make it a good one.